1% of dudes rapping, they ain't nice as me. 98% ain't live the same type of life as me. The judge gave me life and then they sent me where the life is be. That level 4 with depth and vice, the type of stuff they like to see. Two choices, fight or flee. I refuse to die a chump. I never been a mark, but damn, it's scary when that riot jump. I seen dudes cry, get pumped, and some sexually brutalized. Knew a dude who lost his life and he was only doing 5 year-long racial fights when homie all you do is ride. Lonely days and nights up in a hole causing suicide. From the moment you arrive, you see the Mexican mafia, AB skinheads with big giant swastikas, pro-black philosophers, the BGF, the Kumi, and Muslims who will murk you from the nation to the Sunni. That MS was loony, quick to ride up on they rival. Even Christians went to church, hide knives up in they Bible. Political and tribal, the Crips and Damus, the Long Beach, the Hubs and the Dubs and the Grooves, the IE, the Bakersfield, the Dago Pyrus, the hustlers quick to roll, the gangsters gon' move, whatever click you choose.
Say what's cracking, YouTube? It's your boy 16 to life, and I'm back like I'm on a parole violation. You're down. Now, for those of y'all that's new to my page, in 1994, I got arrested. I was eventually sentenced to 16 years plus life, and I served 24 years straight in the California prison system. Yeah, that's me gassing right there on that intro. And if you want to get that song, it's available on a 10-song EP only by digital download. Cashapp, PayPal, or Zelle me $20. And I get it to you ASAP, man. Hit me up on my email. That's 16tolifemusic@gmail.com. 16DALIFEMUSIC@gmail.com. And I'm going to get it to you ASAP. So with all this hoopla surrounding Tory Lanez and people wondering was he in there getting extorted or not, it reminded me of a story, right? A situation. Now, I spoke on this briefly in another story, and it's called Scandalous D Part 1 and Part 2. But I'm going to go into more detail in this particular story right here. Now, this story takes place around 2011. I was at a prison known as CMC East. Now, depending on what prison you in the California Department of Correction system, each prison had its own preferred form of currency for, convicts, whether they was selling stuff, gambling, doing whatever. Sometimes it might be tobacco before they outlawed the tobacco around 2002, 2003, somewhere around there. Sometimes it might be canned goods, food, stamps, whatever. This particular prison, the preferred form of currency was something known as duckets. Now, the only way you could get these duckets was you would have to go to the main canteen. Once a month, every convict who was able was allowed to go out there and shop. Now, while you were shopping, getting your food, your hygiene products, your toothpaste, whatever you was going out there to get, if you wanted to, you was also allowed to purchase up to $50 worth of these duckets. Now, each ducket was $1. Now, on these duckets, they had individual squares, and each square was worth a nickel. Now, the purpose of these duckets were each yard had its own mini canteen, or pretty much was a snack bar, right? So you could go to the snack bar. They sold ice cream, chips, candy, soda, things of that nature. So let's just say you went over there and you bought something. It was $3.65. You would hand the dude to the snack bar 4 ducats. Then he had this little tool, and he'd clip off, he could clip off those little squares, and he will return your change. So these ducats pretty much was like money, and it made hustling and just trying to handle business in prison so much easier, man. I'm talking about if you didn't have a ducat, pretty much you couldn't get nothing. At other pens, if you went outside with some food, those were prime items. A lot of people wanted, chicken in the can, roast beef, seafood. But at this particular prison, they didn't care about none of that. All they wanted was them ducats, ducats, ducats. Now, also, you would have individuals go to a visit. They would go to a visit and they would get $100 from their family. Then they would come back to the yard and they would sell that $100 for up to $200 in ducats. Sometimes a $100 bill might be going for $150. Sometimes it might be going for $180. It just depended on how many of them you had on the yard. If there wasn't a whole lot of them, then you could sell it for more. The reason individuals would do that is because they was trying to circumvent restitution. So when you got sentenced for your crime in California, depending on if you had victims and what you had done, you possibly also may get restitution as a part of your sentence. So when I first came to prison, restitution was only 22%. So if you had your family send you $100, you was going to get $78. Eventually they continued to increase restitution, and it got to the point where it was 55%. So if someone sent you $100, all you would get was $45. And so the reason they would go out here to these visits and bring in money, bring in $100, Then they could sell the $100 for $150 or even up to $200 worth of ducats, and they would even have more money for their $100. Why would somebody spend $100 or $180 or $200 to buy a $100 bill? Because like I said earlier, one of the reasons we were only allowed to have $50 worth of ducats. So if you had, if you was hustling or doing something illegal and you had $500-600 worth of ducats, the police could come in your cell and they would search your cell, and then they would take your ducats. So the $100 bill was easier to hide. Then of course you had people making transactions where they may have needed actual cash, and then in the event they just was using it to hide, they could always turn around and resell it. So those ducats was extremely helpful and useful in hustling and trying to get done what you wanted done. Now, with all that being said, I'm hustling, I'm selling tobacco, I'm doing my thing. I'm doing relatively well because also people come to buy ducats. When you're hustling, you got a lot of ducats. It's another way people try to circumvent the restitution. Say, hey, chill, man, what's up? You got 75 ducats? Yeah, I'm trying to buy 75 ducats. So I would have their people send a Western Union to my people. Once they went and got the money, made sure it was there, I would give them these ducats. Now, tobacco was a very sought after commodity in prison once they started outlawing it and made it contraband. So you could take $100 bill, depending on, if you had the right connections, and you could go get 3 pouches of tobacco. Now, off a pouch of tobacco, depending on how big you rolled the cigarettes, you could get anywhere from 50 to 60 cigarettes. A cigarette back then was $3. So let's just say you get 60 cigarettes. That's $180 just off one. And then you also have 2 more. So that was more than enough to double, triple your money, go back and buy you a couple of $100 bills and still have ducats to go do what you wanted to do, right? So now I'm hustling, I'm selling tobacco, right? So eventually a dude pops up, and the only reason I'm gonna use his real nickname is because I'd already used it before. His name was D. He was up out of Ontario, right? He ran with the IE car. So he gets there, we go to talk, and we hanging out, we chilling, He's trying to find out, the avenues of hustling and doing this and doing that, buying cigarettes or whatever, because he smoked. I don't smoke. So anyway, I get to telling him about, what's going on and how you can get him some bread or whatever. Long story short, we decide to go half on a can of tobacco. Now, a can of tobacco was $500, and you got enough tobacco to triple your money, right? And so the reason I would like to go half, because that was just a whole lot of tobacco to have sitting around in your cell, a whole can. And in the event the COs came up in there and they searched and they found it, or you'd be out of luck, right? So also what I would do when I would have a lot of tobacco, I would pay other individuals to go out there and sell it for me, because, that would keep me from not being hot. So I would give a person 10 cigarettes, which is $30, tell him to bring me back 25. You could sell 10 cigarettes, 5-10 minutes, depending on, how many people had them and how many people was looking for them. So, on a good day, sometimes you may be able to get rid of 60-70 cigarettes, right? And so, like I said, paying people to sell the cigarettes, it kept me out the way. And my profit was so great compared to what I was spending to get the stuff. To me, it was a no-brainer, right? So me and this dude, we started going half on these cans of tobacco. Now, the first couple of times we did it, it went smooth. Now, my homie was the man right next to the man in terms of getting this tobacco. See, and that was a thing about in any prison, right? Sometimes it's hard to get a right plug, and it's hard to always get a quantity of whatever you're trying to get in there, right? So my homie was the man next to the man. I'd get at him, he'd tell me where they wanted the bread sent. We'd send the bread, and we would have the tobacco later that day. So the first couple of times me and D did it, everything is going smooth. Like I said earlier, D smoked, right? So about the third or the fourth time we did it, maybe about a week later, he hit me up like, hey, chill, you got any cigarettes, man? I need some cigarettes to smoke. I'm like, damn, homie, you need some cigarettes? D, we just got a can of tobacco, man. What's up? Oh yeah, man, I did this or I did that. Because sometimes also, when you would get that tobacco, when we would get the tobacco, sometimes you sell quantities, right? You may sell $20 balls or $50 balls. So like a $10 ball, just to make it real simple, is you give a person enough tobacco to where he can get about 5 or 6 cigarettes. So cigarettes was $3. So if you give him a $10 ball and he can get 5 or 6 cigarettes, if he wants to go out there and sell those cigarettes and make him some money, then he can make $8 extra, then turn around, do it again, flipping it and continue to flip his money. For those individuals who like to smoke, then it's better to go buy a $10 ball and get you 5 or 6 cigarettes as opposed to buying them $3 a piece and only getting 3 cigarettes for your $10 pretty much, right? D gave me some cap about he was selling large sums of tobacco, and he had to do this and do that and send some bread back to because D had a few females out there who was looking out for him, and they were the ones who was funding his activities in prison, right? I said, okay, cool, I hit him up, I gave him the tobacco after he hit me up. So next time we go, we get some tobacco, maybe about 3 or 4 days later, he asked me again. Now I'm wondering, like, damn, D, what's going on, man? What the hell is you doing with all this tobacco, right? He give me some old, some old cap, whatever, right? So I slide him the tobacco. Now, around this time, I'm starting to hear a lot of rumors, too, that D has various debts on the yard, which is extremely problematic, right? You are not supposed to be in prison owing somebody, right? And then, if my memory serves me correct, right, I think one of his girlfriends had called the number back that we was using to send the bread wherever it needed to be, and she was complaining that D had not returned the money that she loaned him to get this tobacco, right? So D was messing up on all sides, So long story short, I get wind that he's owing several people. So I go get at him like, hey, D, what's going on, man? Old boy said you owe him some bread. Old boy said you owe him some bread or whatever, homie. Come on, man. You already know we can't be running around here doing stuff that will lead to problems. So yeah, D, he assured me that he take care of it or whatever, right? So I end up getting rid of all my tobacco. So I get at him like, hey, D, what's up, homie? You ready to get another can? He like, oh no, I ain't got no money right now. He gave me some story about whatever he had to do, right? Some drag. Now to this day, I still don't know what the hell D was doing, right? As I think about it, as I look back and I think think about the situation, man, I think D chose to put that stuff in his nose because, like I said, there's always whatever you want to get in prison, man, you can find, man. It's cell phones, whatever type of illicit, drug you was into or whatever, man, you can find it there in prison, right? And the individual selling that stood to make way more money than he would have made on the street. So it definitely was a profitable hustle in prison, right? So long story short, me and D, we stopped going half on the cans of tobacco because D has ran out of bread. I'm starting to hear a lot of rumors, man. D is owing people or whatever. So a dude pushed up on me, a dude who I had a good rapport with, a Crip from another hood out of LA. Rolling 40s, I'm gonna say that. So he push up on me, right, in a respectable way. He like, hey, chill, man, your boy D, man, he been owing me X amount of dollars for X amount of time, right? So I go get at D. I'm like, hey, D, you gotta pay him, homie. This is fist to go somewhere else, right? And so he gave D a day or two. D still didn't get the money. So D had just got a new flat screen TV. At the time, these flat screens were new, and they also had a CD player on the side. So long story short, I told D, man, you got to get a dude that flat screen. You got to pay your debts. He's willing to accept the flat screen. D didn't want to do it, but he did it. So at that point in time, man, I go get at other individuals from other cars that I knew, and I said, hey, homie, listen, man, D's money is no longer good, right? We're not gonna pay no debts. We will, hit him with lefts and rights and send him on his way. But so I'd advise you now, and I'm telling these individuals this, right? Do not do any business with D unless he has the cash. All this, he gonna have his girl send it to you and blah, blah, blah. He gonna Western Union it to you and all that. That's out, because I'm letting you know, homie, we not paying no debts. And I asked all these dudes, does D owe you any money? They all told me either yay or nay. The ones that said, yes, D did owe the money, I went back, got at D, made sure he got those debts out the way. So I told D, D, listen, homie, you starting to do stuff, homie, that's problematic. And you already know how it's gonna go, homie. If you run up debts and you can't pay, we gonna have to put hands on you. Ain't no need in being secretive about what's getting ready to go on, right? So he assured me he was cool and blah blah blah. So maybe a few days later, I don't remember exactly how long it was, D come get at me. He's having a problem, right? I say, what's going on? He owes some dudes some money, right? But these dudes are telling him, hey man, if the money don't get here by 12 o'clock, we're going to double what you owe. If it don't be here by the next day, we're going to triple what you owe, so on and so forth, right? So they putting a squeeze play on D. They didn't found out or figured out, I guess, some type of way in doing business with D, that D is soft as mother's love. You know what I'm saying? D is softer than hugs from grandma. So he ain't fit to bust no great. And it don't matter if you are affiliated with a car, you a gang member. You have dudes up in there, man, who are dudes who don't necessarily have any money on their books. They not doing good or whatever. And some of these dudes, man, be hungrier than a handicapped hyena. You know what I'm saying? So they looking to squeeze and put the twist down on anybody that's willing to go for it. When they see that when you have certain individuals, man, that see like you on Martin Luther King time, in other words, you oppose to violence, you non-violence, you are like Mahatma Gandhi type motherfucker. They gonna put the squeeze on you, right? So they have found out, that D, you know what I'm saying? They found out that D was following the ways of Mother Teresa. He was opposed to violence, and they were squeezing that cat, right? And so D comes in, tells me to come holler at him and stuff like that. I had a cell phone at the time, so we get together and he's telling me, hey, chill, man, listen, man, these dudes are saying they didn't get the money, but his girl was sending him screenshots of wherever they wanted her to send the money had been picked up. The money had been picked up actually in San Luis Obispo, which was kind of odd because these dudes happened to be who was squeezing D was from LA. And I'm thinking, like, how do they got somebody way up here in San Luis Obispo picking up the money from Western Union? But who knows? Maybe they came up there to visit the dudes who he was sending the money to or whatever, right? But he definitely had concrete evidence that the money had been picked up, but they was telling him no, they hadn't got the money. I'm like, D, the hell with them dudes, man, But D, even though he had evidence that they had picked the money up, D had continued to pay these enormous fees that they was putting on, the money not being there. They was telling him, hey man, if the money don't get here by such and such, you owe extra. And even though he had concrete evidence that they had picked the money up, D was paying extra. I'm like, D, man, come on, homie, what the hell is you doing, man? So they was squeezing D, they was extorting D, right? D, like I say, man, I think D was, I think D was D was powdering his nose, man, because D had a lot of different debts, right? And I couldn't understand all these debts, and he was starting to get scandalous. D came to me, got some money from me, and then pretended that it was somebody else who wanted the money and all types of stuff, man. So these dudes was continuing to press on D, you know what I'm saying? And so eventually, man, things came to an end where D had owed it so many people that we had to go in there and put them lefts and rights on D and send D on his way, man. After we bust D up with lefts and rights, the dudes who was squeezing him tried to come and get at us, right? I believe they came and got at the homie Wack from Gateway initially. I telling him, hey man, look, did you guys beat D up? And the homie Wack was like, yeah, we whooped on him. Why? What's up? He's like, man, well, that dude owed me X amount of money, and now, you know what I'm saying, you got to pay his debt. Wack told him, the homie, you got me twisted. We can get out on Gateway Crip. I ain't paying no other man's debt. So I guess they assumed that, since D was soft, we all was soft. But it definitely didn't go down like that, man. And if you want to check out that story, like I say, go check the story out. It's called Scandalous D, Part 1 and Part 2. But the whole purpose of this story was you can be in prison. You can be affiliated. You can be, you can say you whoever, right? But you have individuals, man, that are running around. They don't have money, or maybe they do have money and they just have these predatory type ways. And regardless of who you affiliate or associate yourself with in prison, if an individual thinks that you are soft and he thinks he can take advantage of you and manipulate you through fear or intimidation and you go for it, then you definitely have individuals who are going to do that, man. Anyway, you already know what time it is. It's your boy 16 to life. Resume normal program.